Viridian's 3 hearts nearly stopped when the human approached. In all her 16 rotations as xenobiologist aboard the intergalactic science vessel Frost Seeker, she had never encountered such a brazen gesture. The human, liaison officer, Elior Wynn, was reaching for her, arms extended, face contorted into what the cultural briefings had called a smile. But Viridian knew better. Exposed teeth were a threat display among apex predators across 17 star systems. "Don't," she hissed, dorsal spines reflexively flaring beneath her thermal regulation suit. The temperature in the laboratory plummeted as her body instinctively shed heat. Elior paused, arms still outstretched. "I'm sorry. I forgot Crivetians don't shake hands. We do not touch." Viridian's silvery skin darkened to slate gray, the Crivetian equivalent of a flush. Contact was rare among her species. Their homeworld, Krivet Prime, was a frigid moon orbiting a gas giant where temperatures rarely climbed above freezing. Evolution had made them efficient heat conservers. Any physical contact meant precious thermal energy lost. Touch was reserved. For mating or mourning, never casual interaction. Right. Cultural difference. Elior withdrew his hands, tucking them behind his back. "I'll try to remember." The diplomatic mission had begun only 3 standard weeks ago when the human delegation arrived on the Frost Seeker. The Galactic Council had insisted that Crivetians work with humans to study the anomalous ice formations on Tundra 9, a planet with environments too harsh even for Crivetian explorers. Humans, with their bizarre internal heating systems and emotional resilience, were perfectly suited for the task. Captain Morzik had assigned Viridian as the scientific liaison, much to her dismay. Humans were unpredictable, constantly leaking emotions through facial expressions and body language. Worst of all, they were warm, walking furnaces that disrupted the carefully regulated cold of Crivetian spaces. "The expedition to Tundra 9's northern hemisphere leaves tomorrow," Viridian said, returning to her workstation. Her 3-fingered hands, each digit tipped with a crystalline claw, manipulated holographic data points with precision. "Have you completed your thermal endurance training?" "About that." Elior scratched his head, another incomprehensible human gesture. "I don't think I'll pass your standards. Humans can't survive the temperatures you're suggesting without specialized equipment. Then the mission will fail." Viridian's voice was as cold as her laboratory. "The Council will be displeased." "Or," Elior suggested, stepping closer than Viridian found comfortable, "we could compromise. Work together. Find solutions that benefit both species." Viridian's third eye, the sensory organ centered on her forehead that detected thermal variations, focused intently on the human. Elior radiated heat like a small star, a reminder of why Crivetians had initially feared humans when first contact occurred decades ago. These creatures seemed to burn from within, defying the cold emptiness of space through sheer biological stubbornness. "I will consider alternatives," Viridian conceded. That night, as the ship's cycle shifted to rest period, Viridian meditated in her cryo chamber, struggling to understand these humans. Their casual disregard for thermal efficiency was matched only by their persistent optimism, a trait Crivetians viewed as dangerous as it often led to reckless behavior. Yet something about Elior's suggestion lingered in her thoughts, a persistent warmth she couldn't explain or extinguish. The descent to Tundra 9's surface was treacherous. Atmospheric turbulence battered the shuttle as Viridian monitored the environmental readings with growing concern. The storm had arrived earlier than predicted, turning their routine expedition into a potential disaster. "Hull integrity compromised in Section 7, announced the ship's AI. "Temperature regulation systems failing." Elior strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat beside Viridian. "Can we abort?" "Negative. The storm's magnetic properties have disrupted our navigation systems." Viridian's voice remained steady despite the crisis. Crivetians prided themselves on emotional regulation. "We must complete the landing sequence." The shuttle lurched violently, throwing Elior against his restraints. Viridian's multiple hearts accelerated, pumping cryogenic fluids through her circulatory system to maintain optimal cognitive function. The shuttle's viewports frosted over as external temperatures plunged to levels that would freeze human blood. Instantly. Impact imminent, the AI warned. Brace for... The rest was lost in the catastrophic sound of the shuttle crashing into Tundra 9's icy surface. Viridian's consciousness faded momentarily as emergency systems activated around her. When she regained awareness, the cabin was dark except for flashing emergency lights. The temperature was dropping rapidly. A dire situation for the human, though temporarily comfortable for her Kravitian physiology. Elior? She unbuckled herself and moved through the damaged cabin. Respond. She found him slumped in his seat, a laceration across his forehead seeping red liquid. Her third eye detected his body temperature already beginning to fall. Dangerous. For a human. Our communications array is destroyed, Viridian reported, though she wasn't certain Elior could hear her. External temperature is negative 120 degrees Celsius. Primary power systems offline. Emergency beacon activated. Elior stirred, his eyes fluttering open. That bad, huh? His attempt at humor fell flat as he shivered violently. You require thermal regulation. Your survival suit was damaged in the impact. Viridian assessed the situation with clinical detachment. The emergency thermal blankets were stored in Section 7. The compromised section, Elior concluded, teeth chattering. Perfect. Viridian's third eye tracked the rapid decline in Elior's core temperature. Humans were resilient but not against Tundra 9's merciless cold. Rescue would take hours at minimum. You need to conserve heat, she stated. Got any suggestions? Elior asked, trying to stand but collapsing back into his seat. The solution was obvious but culturally abhorrent. Physical contact was taboo among Krivatians outside of the most intimate relationships. Yet the human would die without intervention. I will assist you, she decided, moving closer. Krivatians can modulate our body temperature. Elior looked confused. I thought you were cold-blooded. A simplification. We regulate thermal energy, based on circumstance. She hesitated. I can temporarily generate heat, though it is uncomfortable for my species. You don't have to. The mission requires your survival. Viridian interrupted, settling beside him. Tentatively, she placed a three-fingered hand on his arm. The contact sent unpleasant warmth cascading through her system as she deliberately reversed her body's natural cooling processes. Elior's eyes widened. You're warming up. This is challenging, she admitted, her silvery skin taking on a bluish tinge with the effort. But necessary. As the hours passed and the temperature continued to drop, Viridian maintained the thermal connection, gradually increasing the contact area until her arm pressed against his. Each moment of contact was a cultural transgression, yet she found herself increasingly fascinated by the strange comfort of the proximity. Why are humans so fixated on physical connection? She asked to distract herself from the discomfort. Despite his condition, Elior smiled. Because sometimes words aren't enough. Rescue arrived 14 hours later, finding both scientists huddled together in the shuttle's emergency shelter. The Kravitian medical team's reaction to finding their chief xenobiologist in physical contact with a human ranged from shock to revulsion, but none dared comment as Captain Morzik personally oversaw their extraction. Back aboard the Frost Seeker, Viridian underwent mandatory decontamination while Elior recovered in the specially designed human medical bay. 3 days passed before they saw each other again, meeting in the ship's observation deck where the infinite cold of space offered Viridian some comfort after her ordeal. The medics say you saved my life, Elior said, approaching cautiously, maintaining the proper Krivatian distance. Viridian's 3 hearts fluttered irregularly. I preserved a valuable expedition member. Is that all it was? His question hung between them like frost crystals in the air. Before she could formulate a suitably detached response, Captain Morzik entered the observation deck, his imposing height and elaborate rank crystals demanding immediate attention. Xenobiologist Viridian, Liaison Officer Wynn. The captain acknowledged them with a formal temperature drop. The Galactic Council has reviewed your shuttle's data recordings. Despite the crash, You captured critical information about Tundra 9's anomalous ice structures. We did? Elior looked surprised. The shuttle's external sensors continued functioning throughout the emergency, Viridian explained. They would have recorded the unique crystalline formations we observed during descent. Captain Morzik's third eye narrowed. Indeed. The Council believes these formations may be evidence of non-carbon-based life forms. They've ordered a full expedition. After what happened, Elior began. You two will lead it, Morzik interrupted. Your unconventional methods produced results. After the captain departed, an uncomfortable silence settled between them. They're punishing you, Elior finally said, for the physical contact. Viridian's dorsal spines shifted beneath her suit. Kryvidians do not punish. We optimize. Then why send us back to a planet that nearly killed us? Because we survived, she replied simply. Captain Morzik believes our adaptation may prove advantageous. Preparation for the second expedition consumed the next week. Viridian found herself unexpectedly conscious of Elior's presence during planning sessions, her third eye tracking his movements even when her attention should have been elsewhere. The memory of their physical contact lingered like residual heat. The science team developed specialized equipment for the new mission, including improved thermal regulation suits and advanced communication arrays. Throughout the process, Viridian maintained strict professional distance from Elior, yet something had fundamentally changed in their dynamic. Your thermal exchange with the human has altered your biochemistry, the chief medical officer informed her during a routine examination. Your body has developed new heat regulation pathways. Is it permanent? Viridian asked, alarmed. Unknown. No Kryvidian has maintained prolonged physical contact with a human before. The medical officer's tone held no judgment, but her third eye pulsed with concern. You are pioneer in interspecies adaptation. That night, Viridian found herself unable to enter the restorative hibernation state. Her thoughts kept returning to the crash, to the strange intimacy of sharing thermal energy with another being. Among her people, such exchange was reserved for life partners who formed permanent bonds. Had she inadvertently initiated something more significant than a rescue? The possibility both terrified and intrigued her. When Elior requested a private meeting the following day, all three of her hearts accelerated to uncomfortable speeds. The ice isn't natural, Elior said, displaying the holographic findings from their first expedition. Look at these molecular structures. They stood in the research laboratory, carefully maintaining proper distance as they examined the data. The crystalline formations they'd discovered on Tundra 9 exhibited impossible symmetry patterns, 12-fold arrangements that defied conventional physics. Silicon-based molecular chains, Viridian observed, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her personal discomfort. With trace elements unknown to both our species' periodic tables. It's alive, isn't it? Elior's eyes reflected the blue glow of the hologram. That would be an extraordinary claim requiring extraordinary evidence, she replied, though her research instincts suggested he might be right. 3 other scientists entered the laboratory, 2 Kryvitians and Dr. Nix, the human xenobotanist. Viridian noticed how the Kryvitians maintained precise distance from everyone, while Dr. Nix casually brushed against Elior's shoulder in greeting. The casual contact triggered an unexpected thermal reaction in Viridian's system, an emotion her people rarely acknowledged: jealousy. Preliminary analysis suggests the formations may be a form of exofungal network, Dr. Nix announced, seemingly oblivious to Viridian's discomfort. A planet-wide mycelial system adapted to extreme cold. Impossible, stated senior researcher Ilzaikiv, his dorsal spines bristling beneath his thermal suit. Biological systems cannot function at such temperatures. Unless, Viridian interjected, they utilize quantum coherence to transfer energy, similar to how certain Earth plants use quantum effects in photosynthesis. Elior's expression brightened. You've been studying Earth biology? I reviewed the databases, she admitted, her skin darkening slightly. For comparative analysis purposes. The Meeting continued for hours as they prepared for the second expedition. Throughout the discussion, Viridian found herself increasingly aware of the subtle ways humans communicated through proximity and casual contact. Dr. Nix frequently touched Elior's arm for emphasis, leaned close when speaking, behaviors that would be unthinkable among Cravatians. After the others departed, Elior remained behind. "Something's different about you," he said, studying her with surprising perception. Since the crash, Viridian focused on shutting down the laboratory equipment. The medical officer reports some biochemical adaptations. Nothing significant. It's more than that. Elior took a step closer, crossing into what would normally be uncomfortable proximity. "You watch us, humans I mean, differently now." "Scientific observation," she deflected. "Is that why your third eye dilates when Dr. Nix touches me?" Viridian's hands stilled on the equipment. Cravatians prided themselves on emotional control, yet she found herself struggling to maintain composure. "Physical contact has significance in my culture," she finally admitted. "What happened during our emergency situation would typically indicate a profound connection between Cravatians." Understanding dawned on Elior's face. "You think you're bonded to me now?" "No," she said too quickly. "It was merely a survival necessity. But it affected you." She couldn't deny it. "My species does not experience change easily. We evolved in an environment where stability meant survival." Elior nodded slowly. "And I disrupted that stability. Yes." The admission felt both terrifying and liberating. He considered this for a long moment before asking, "Was it just about survival, Viridian, when you chose to help me?" The question penetrated her carefully constructed professional facade. In truth, she had asked herself the same question repeatedly since their rescue. Why had she so readily violated her people's most fundamental taboo? "I don't know," she answered honestly. "And that uncertainty is unsettling." Part 5, the second expedition to Tundra 9 began under more favorable conditions. Their new research vessel, equipped with advanced stabilizers and reinforced thermal barriers, descended through the atmosphere with minimal turbulence. Viridian monitored the systems with practiced efficiency, though her awareness of Elior in the seat beside her remained distractingly acute. "Approaching the anomaly site," she announced as they hovered over the vast, glittering crystalline structures that stretched across the planet's polar region like frozen lightning. "It's beautiful," Elior whispered, pressing closer to the viewport. Viridian had to agree. The formations had grown since their first crash landing, spreading in fractal patterns across the tundra. Sensor readings indicated complex molecular activity, despite the devastating cold. -140 degrees Celsius on the surface. "These structures appear to be communicating," Dr. Nix observed from her station. "Electrochemical pulses traveling through the matrix at regular intervals." The research team deployed surface probes and collection drones while maintaining orbit at a safe distance. As data streamed back, Viridian's scientific training battled with growing wonder. The crystalline network was indeed alive, a silicon-based organism that spanned continents, thinking thoughts slower than glaciers but deeper than oceans. "It's responding to our probes," Elior reported suddenly. "Look at the pattern changes." On the monitors, the crystal structures were realigning, forming new configurations that seemed to reach toward their vessel. "It's curious about us," Viridian realized. "A sentient ice formation." Ulzikiv, the senior researcher, huffed in disbelief. "Anthropomorphizing natural phenomena is unscientific." "Xenomorphizing," Elior corrected with a slight smile. "And maybe not so unscientific. Some theories suggest consciousness emerges from certain types of complex systems regardless of substrate." As they debated, the anomaly beneath them pulsed with increasing intensity. Viridian's instruments registered a surge of energy unlike anything previously documented. "We should collect samples directly," she decided. "Automated probes aren't sufficient. Surface temperatures make that impossible," Lazikiv objected. "Not for Cravatians in specialized equipment," Viridian countered. "And the human thermal suits should function for limited exposure." Despite Lozykiv's protests, Captain Morzik authorized the surface expedition. Hours later, Viridian and Elior stood on Tundra 9's frozen surface, their breath crystallizing instantly inside their helmets. The cold was profound, a primal force that seemed to slow time itself. The crystal formation surrounded them, pulsing with subtle bioluminescence. Up close, they resembled nothing so much as neurons, branching, connecting, communicating through light and electrical impulses. "It's a brain," Elior breathed in awe. "A planetary consciousness." Viridian's scientific skepticism battled with the evidence before her. "If so, it operates on a timescale we can barely comprehend. Each thought might take years." As they collected samples, the crystal nearest to Elior suddenly shifted, growing toward him with deliberate precision. Before Viridian could shout a warning, it made contact with his suit. Elior gasped, then went rigid. "Elior!" Viridian rushed to him, abandoning protocol. "What's happening?" "I can feel it," he whispered, voice filled with wonder rather than pain. "It's communicating." The crystal had penetrated his outer suit layer but hadn't breached the thermal barriers. Instead, it seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, creating a feedback loop of information. "What is it saying?" Viridian asked, her scientific mind recording every detail, even as concern for Elior dominated her thoughts. "It's ancient," Elior replied, eyes unfocused. "So ancient. It's been alone for billions of years, thinking, growing. It sensed our warmth when we crashed. It's been reaching out ever since." Viridian's third eye detected unusual thermal patterns spreading from the crystal through Elior's suit. Not dangerous, but transformative, as though the entity was attempting to understand warmth by experiencing it directly. A species that evolved to thrive in absolute cold, she realized, encountering warmth for the first time. "It's not just studying us," Elior said quietly. "It's lonely." The Galactic Council chambers fell silent as the holographic presentation concluded. Representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations sat in stunned contemplation of what they had witnessed, evidence of the first truly alien intelligence ever encountered. "This crystal entity," began the Arcturian delegate, their luminous appendages rippling with skepticism, "communicates through thermal exchange?" "Yes," Viridian confirmed, standing tall despite the importance of the occasion. 6 months had passed since their discovery on Tundra 9, months filled with intensive research and unprecedented interspecies collaboration. "It perceives reality through temperature differentials and processes information via quantum coherence. And you believe it's sentient?" The human ambassador leaned forward, fascinated. "We believe it represents an entirely new category of consciousness," Elior answered, standing beside Viridian, "one that operates on a timescale drastically different from our own. A single thought might take decades to form." The council chamber hummed with murmurs and temperature fluctuations as the implications settled. A non-carbon-based life form that had evolved in conditions most species considered hostile to life itself. The discovery challenged fundamental assumptions about consciousness throughout the galaxy. "What does this entity desire?" asked the Kravitian High Counselor, his formal robes glittering with status crystals. Viridian and Elior exchanged a glance. Their months of research had forged something neither had anticipated, a partnership that transcended their biological differences. "Connection," Viridian stated simply. For billions of years, it existed in isolation, believing itself unique in the universe. Our arrival represented the first contact with other conscious beings, which is why, Elior continued, we propose establishing a permanent research station on Tundra 9, a place where our species can learn from this entity while helping it learn about us. The debate lasted hours, with various delegations raising concerns about contamination, resource allocation, and ethical interaction with a non-humanoid intelligence. Throughout it all, Viridian remained acutely aware of Elior's presence beside her, a warmth she had once feared but now found strangely essential. When the council finally adjourned to consider their proposal, Viridian and Elior retreated to a private observation deck overlooking the space station's docking bay. Do you think they'll approve it? Elior asked. The scientific value alone justifies the expedition, Viridian replied. But more significantly, this represents an opportunity to expand our understanding of consciousness itself. Elior smiled. You've changed, you know. 6 months ago, you would have focused solely on data collection protocols. She couldn't deny it. The crystal entity isn't the only one who learned from contact with something different. Their time on Tundra 9 had transformed her in ways she was still processing. Extended exposure to humans, to Elior specifically, had altered her biochemistry. Her thermal regulation now functioned differently, allowing her to tolerate warmer environments. More profoundly, she had developed emotional responses that were uncommon among her species. The medical officers say I've undergone permanent adaptation, she admitted. I can never fully return to traditional Krivitian society. Do you regret it? Elior asked softly. Viridian considered the question with characteristic thoroughness. Her violation of cultural taboos had cost her standing among conservative Krivitians. Yet the discoveries they'd made, both scientific and personal, seemed worth the sacrifice. No, she finally answered. Adaptation is the foundation of evolution. Elior hesitated, then slowly extended his hand toward her, not demanding contact, but offering the possibility. Speaking of adaptation, Viridian looked at his outstretched hand. Once such a gesture would have triggered instant withdrawal. Now, after months of gradual acclimatization, she found herself curious rather than repulsed. Tentatively, she placed her 3-fingered hand in his 5-fingered one. The contact sent warmth cascading through her system, no longer uncomfortable, but pleasantly stimulating. The crystal entity taught us something important, Elior said, his fingers gently closing around hers. Different types of consciousness can find common ground. Through thermal exchange, Viridian agreed, her third eye dilating as she focused on their joined hands. Through connection, he corrected. The council summoned them back hours later, announcing approval for the permanent research station. As Viridian and Elior prepared for their return to Tundra 9, now as co-directors of the most significant xenobiological project in galactic history, she reflected on the improbable journey that had brought them together. It had begun with a simple act of survival, a cold-blooded alien generating heat to save a warm-blooded human. Yet that moment of contact had sparked something neither species had anticipated, the revelation that connection transcended biological differences, that understanding could bridge even the most fundamental divides. As their ship prepared for departure, Elior offered his hand again. This time Viridian took it without hesitation. Ready to make history? He asked. Viridian's 3 hearts beat in perfect synchrony. I believe we already have. Across the galaxy on Tundra 9, the crystal entity continued its slow, patient growth, reaching skyward not in aggression but in hope, seeking the warmth of connection it had glimpsed so briefly. No longer alone in a cold universe, it pulsed with new purpose, new understanding. And somewhere in the spaces between stars, the knowledge spread that in an infinite cosmos of differences, connection remained the universal constant, even when it began with something as simple as a hug.